Hi, with RouteFabric. In today's session, we are going to talk about Tableau fundamentals. This is the continuation of Tableau fundamental section from our previous session. So in this session, we are covering the topics that were remaining from the previous sessions, which are aggregation, average functions, granularity, and show me button. So let's look at aggregation. It is important to understand aggregation because it defines how Tableau operates. In Tableau, you can aggregate dimensions and measures. However, 99% of time you will aggregate measures. So whenever you add a measure to your view, Tableau automatically aggregates that measure. For example, let's double click on sales field. So this is the total sales value for all the orders. Since the sales field is a measure, it is automatically aggregated with the sum function. So let's double click on customer name now. Now we have sum of sales value for each customer. Let's arrange it in descending order. So each bar here represents sum of sales for that particular customer. For example, let's select the customer who has highest sales. Right click the bar and click on view data to see what is behind the bar. So Tableau gives us a summary here, but we are looking for all the data. So click on full data. So let's look at this data. We have 15 rows here and each row is represented by a unique row ID. So we can see Tableau automatically sums the value for each customer and creates the bar for the sum of these values. So the value of the bar is equal to sum of all these sum values. So let's see what is the highest sales for this customer. So if you look at here, the highest sales is 22,638. Let's keep in mind this number for now. Close this window and we'll go back to our bar chart. So now, as seen, each bar represents aggregated sales for that customer. Now, is there any way you can see the data points inside each bar? Yes, there is a way. We need to disable the aggregation. So for that, go and click on this analysis tab and uncheck aggregate measures. The first thing to realize is we do not have sum in front of measure sales. So it is sales only instead of sum of sales. Now we can see the data points which has created the bars. Here we have the highest sale for Miller. Remember the number 22,638? Here is that point. So by default, Tableau aggregates your measures and you can disable it under the Analytics tab. Let's look at other aggregate functions. So before that, let's just go to Analysis and check this. And now, if you come here and click on this drop down and go to Measure, you have various aggregate functions here. For the sake of simplicity, what we'll do is, let's say we have 5 orders and the sales values are 10, 5, 2, 3 and 5. So we'll find out what will be the result for various aggregate functions. For sum, it is going to be 25. For average, if you see the calculation here, it is going to be 5. Median is nothing but the middle value of the set. So here the middle value is 5. Just in case if you have 2 elements in middle, then we take the average of the 2 elements for median. Okay. The minimum value is 2, maximum value is 10. And the count is 5 items. So the count is 5. But the count distinct is 4 because count distinct is the number of unique items. Here 5 is repeating twice. So we'll consider it only once. There are a few statistical functions as well, like standard deviation and variance. So these functions give us the number which indicates how the data points are spread out from the average. We will not get into details here for the statistical function. We'll get back to our Tableau. Now let's change the aggregate function from sum to average. Now let's drag the sales to the row shelf again. But what happened here? We just converted the aggregate function to average, but why did we get sum here again? So we are getting sum here because the default aggregation function for sales is sum. If you want to change the default aggregation function, then you have to go here and you have to change it from here. Okay, so if you go to default properties and aggregation, you have to change it here. Now let's make the default as minimum. What we'll do is we'll go again, we'll do default properties, aggregation, minimum. Now if you add the sales to the row shelf, or say we'll add it to columns. No, let's add it to row shelf. Now you can see here minimum, what is the minimum sale value for each customer. Okay, now we'll just change it back to sum. Okay, now until now we have seen measures aggregation. Now let's see what happens if we aggregate dimensions. If you want to aggregate the dimension, you do not have all the functions available. You only have minimum, maximum, count and count distinct functions. But why don't we have sum, average and other functions? Let's think a little bit about it. If you think about it, it is very logical to not have these functions because, as you already know, dimensions contain textual data. For example, customer name. So you can't have sum for customer name, right? And if you can't have sum, then you can't have average. Okay, so now let's see how aggregate functions work for dimensions. Here I've taken, this is our customer name, small set. So let's see how these functions work. So here it's arranged in orderly manner from A to Z. So the minimum would be Adrian, maximum would be Tamara, count would be number of names, which is 5, and distinct count would be the number of unique names. Since Becky is repeating twice here, we are getting it 4. Okay, so now let's see what is the, we'll go back to our Tableau and we'll just clear our field. Now let's see what is the number of unique customers in total. What we'll do is we'll double click customer name and we want to aggregate customer name dimension to know the number of unique customers. So let's right click on, let's click on this customer name, and what we'll do is we'll go here measure and we'll do count distinct. Now if you come here, you can see there are 793 unique customers in total, and if you see here, this is an aggregated function. The aggregated function has turned into a measure. So whatever you're aggregating, whichever dimension you're aggregating, Tableau creates a new temporary measure column so that dimension actually takes the characteristics of measure. Okay, now let's go to our next topic, which is average function. So we've already spoken about average function, but let's talk about it a little bit in detail now. So the average function, it ignores the null and blank values. The null values represent the absent of data, which means there is no record at all. And please do not confuse null and zero. So what we'll do here is, let's connect, let's close this, let's connect to data, Microsoft Excel, we'll connect to 0 versus null Excel file. Okay, so this is our data. We only have 2 columns. The only difference between these columns is in the last row. In the first column we have 0 in the last row, and in the second column we have null instead of 0. So what we will get, what result will you get if we apply average functions to these columns? So let's create a new sheet and add both the fields to the view. So okay, we need to change this aggregate function from sum to average. And now let's go to show me and click on text table since we want to see text values. And here you go. As you can see, the average value with null is 6 because Tableau completely ignores the empty cell, and average value with 0 is 4.8 because 0 is a number and Tableau does not ignore the numbers. Okay, so how the average function is calculated for null and 0? I hope it's clear now. Now let's go to granularity. What is granularity? It is the scale or level of detail in a set of data. Many people use the term granularity and level of detail interchangeably, but please do not confuse level of detail and level of detail calculations. These two are different things. So let's start with granularity. So granularity is breaking your data points into smaller pieces. So what we'll do is, let's just clear this. Okay. Now let's double click on, okay, we'll remove this. Let's go back to the sample store data, orders. Let's go to sheet 1. Okay, now let's double click on quantity and sales. Since both of the fields are aggregated numbers, Tableau has created a scatter plot and arranges the axis for these values. To see the values, just go over the data point. Suppose I want to see the values next to the data point without hovering over it. What can we do is drag the fields to the label mark. So I'll drag sales and quantity to the label mark. There you go. Now you can see the values. Here, as you can see, we only have one mark. So let's add a dimension to our view and let's see how the level of details change. I will add region field. Okay, I will add region field and I'll add it to the color mark. So now each region is represented with a different color. Now you can see we have 4 points instead of 1, as we have 4 regions and each region is represented by a different color. So we have increased the granularity. Now let's also add segment field. We will add segment to the shape mark. Now as you can see, we have a unique shape for each segment. So we have 12 data points now in our view. So what we'll do is we'll add category field as well. Okay, we'll add category to size mark. Now since we have 3 categories and we already had 12 points earlier, the total number of points we're getting now is 36. But the problem is it looks a little bit messy. And it's not really easy to understand all the points. So let's remove the segment from shape mark. Okay, now you can see the number of data points decreased, which means our granularity also decreased. So let's add city field to the, okay, let's, what we'll do is we will put it into color region. Okay. So now you can see earlier we had region. Now it has replaced, city has replaced region. And also, since there are a lot of cities, Tableau asks us, do we want to filter it before applying? So right now we want to add all the members. So I'll just click on add all members. Okay. So now what we'll do is let's remove category from here. Now we'll only have cities and the measures. So as you can see, we have the highest sum of sales and quantity for New York City, and then the second highest is Los Angeles. So this was about granularity, uh, how we can increase the granularity, decrease the granularity. So the dimensions, the more number of dimensions you have, the more granularity you get in your data. So now let's go to our last topic, which is show me. Let's look at show me feature. Now show me is a really cool feature of Tableau, and I think you will use it so often, especially when you're a beginner. As you may know, Tableau suggests some charts for your view under the show me feature. Let's make it all clear. And if I now I'm already connected to this superstore data. Let's click on okay. Now anyways, show me is enabled. So but you can see there is no chart enabled here because we did not select any field. So let's select sales field and see which charts get enabled. So you can see text tables, horizontal bars and histogram are enabled. What if I want to have multiple fields inside of only the sales field? In that case, I need to select multiple fields by using control key. What I'll do is I'll click on sales, I'll hold control key, I'll click on category and say we'll click on segment field. Now we have 2 dimensions and 1 measures. Let's see what Tableau says in the show me menu. So Tableau automatically updates the available charts for each selection. Okay, let's select the stacked bar chart. Now for stacked bar chart we need 1 or more dimension and 1 or more measure. So you can also see the required fields to create certain chart types, right? So the show me feature is also useful to learn about chart types because you will get to know by how many dimensions and how many measures are required to build each chart type. But you don't need to know all of these chart types by heart, but you have to know their names at least. To clear the exam, you need to know their names at least. In the exam, you can always open Tableau and check up what is required to create each particular chart type. So you don't need to by heart it. In the real exam, we cannot use the control key as well. Just like we use control key here to select sales, category and segment, you cannot use it. So you'll have to double click all of this and then go to show me and then select the proper chart. So I strongly suggest you playing with this show me feature, check what is necessary and how the marks change when you create different charts. For example, if you create a pie chart here, there will be an additional angle mark. Okay. So please do not forget to check the marks area for each chart type. So let's revisit the topics we have covered in this video. First, we learned aggregation and the available aggregate functions in Tableau. We also learned how to change the default aggregation of the measures. Then we saw how to aggregate the dimensions and the available aggregation functions in Tableau for dimensions. Next, we also saw the concept of granularity or level of detail. You can create a new sheet and play with these features. Okay, so what will happen if we drop state field or the customer name field? Which field will bring more granularity or level of detail? You can do it and see what happens. And at the end, we learned about the show me feature. So I hope this was informative, and if you're interested to learn more about Tableau features, you can check out our online courses at routefabric.com. Happy learning!